It's not calling you Josh Frydenberg, it's calling you Dosh Frydenberg.
Under the Coalition, taxes for hard-working Australians will always be lower.
You know, I don't hold a hose, mate, and I don't sit in a control room.
They're answers that only can come from Victoria, I'm afraid, because that's not my job.
But I ain't spending any time, though, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person was torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Well, g'day, listeners, and welcome once again to the Two Jacks. It's episode 137. And we are recording on just after midday on the 4th of December. And we have to rush through, don't we, Jack? Because the test is upon us. The Gabba beckons.
Well, if we don't finish quickly, the test might be over.
Might be over. Could be over. Could be over. Well, we figure it'll make the dusk session, and then it could get very interesting.
Which is perfect in Hong Kong. It means the last session here starts at 5 o'clock, which is the magic hour when it's acceptable to have a small Asahi.
Now, here's one thing I don't know, and we don't want to leap ahead to sport just yet, but are they using the Duke pink ball or are they using the Kookaburra? Because Mitchell Starc reckons the pink, the pink Duke, and he reckons it just moves all over the place. It's just even from a bowler, he thinks it's a little unfair. So we'll soon see. One thing we can say is the dusk is shorter in Brisbane than it will be in Adelaide, so that might extend the game somewhat. We hope it's going to be a great game, and we'll move on to that later. Meanwhile, Jack, in your part of the world, the Tai Po fire, which we spoke about last week, terrible business, 159 now dead. I think when we spoke about it last week, it was 40 with a hell of a lot of people missing. The dead age from 1 to 97. And look, tell me what's going on in terms of investigations, Jack.
Well, first of all, the government ordered a kind of a 3-day citywide mourning period, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Right.
And you know, there's been lots of laying of flowers and all that kind of stuff. And you know, generally
not a public
speaking,
holiday, and I don't mean to be facetious, but what happens on the day of mourning? Flowers,
there were
site, those sorts of things.
And there were down at Tamar at the government headquarters. There were ceremonies, etc., and all of the top officials turned up and had a 3-minute silence and all that kind of stuff. And there were speeches made and all that sort of thing. And indeed, some of the schools are cancelling Christmas parties and all that kind of stuff, staff Christmas functions. It's been taken quite seriously sort of across the board, really. And the government, I think, sort of doing a fairly good job. They've announced that they're going to have a judge-led inquiry that's going to look not just at the Tai Po fire, but at potential problems or problems that they're pretty sure exist in the way that building management is run at these big estates and how the contracts for renovation are done. There's some suggestions that there's some skullduggery going on with that which would surprise very few people, I suppose. But they'll be looking at all of that. There's evidence that at least some of the green cloth that they hang around the outside of the buildings didn't have the right level of fire retardant, and that flammable materials were used to seal off the lift wells, etc., which would which would cause the fire to come inside the building, right? Whereas ordinarily
there was one fellow, I believe, who was evacuated quite late from a stairwell, Jack, you were saying last week.
Yes, he was found in a stairwell. And some of the bodies have been found in stairwells as well and lobby areas, etc. So there'll be a lot to unpack. I always think you don't want to rush in and say, well, that's the cause of it, this is what it's all about, until the evidence is collected. These days, cause of fire evidence seems to me to be very good, that they're very good at isolating exactly what happened.
There were 3 men arrested last week. Just to wrap
Yeah.
up, where was that?
I think there are more. I think it might be up to 12 arrests now.
Right.
These are mainly people who are involved in as consultants or contractors in the renovation or in the management of it.
Like not labourers, not construction workers.
No, not that I'm aware of. No. So that sort of investigation as to exactly where the fire started tends to take a little bit longer.
Okay. All right. A terrible situation, and no doubt you'll give us a bit more as we go, Jack.
Can I just say the government's raised a lot of money to look after it, and they've announced, I think.
Well, there must be thousands homeless.
Yeah, and they've been put up in hotels and all that kind of stuff, hotels and other accommodation. There were a dozen or more of the dead were foreign domestic helpers, mainly Indonesians. They're normally from Java. I think they're nearly all from Java and Filipinos. And I think the government's going to give them 800,000 Hong Kong dollars each family. Will get that.
Give me the Australian on that, Jack.
Divide by 5. Your maths is probably better than mine.
160.
Okay. Yeah. Which probably goes a fair way in Java. There was a harrowing story I read a couple of days ago of a Javanese fellow who he does long distance truck driving while his wife works in Tai Po, and that she rang him to ask him to forgive her for anything she might have done wrong, because she was aware that they weren't getting out, that there was no way out, and she was standing there holding the baby of the family she was working for. Oh, dear. Yeah. Awful stuff.
Awful stuff. All right. Well, moving on, Jack, to matters domestic in Australia. Next week, I think Wednesday, the under 16 social media restrictions kick in, Jack. And I wrote about this yesterday. They are sort of hosing down expectations on this a fair bit. This has very, very wide support among parents, huge support, sort of up around the 80% the last time I looked. They keep saying that they'll add to the list of the prohibited list. There are a couple of things like Roblox and Discord, which are not on the list, which have been problematic around the world in terms of child sexual exploitation. And it seems to be just they're rolling it out. They're now talking, rather than sort of comprehensive protection for children in Australia, they're now talking about cultural change, Jack, which is an odd sort of thing, and it is really designed to sort of alleviate or diminish, I suppose, high expectations around this. There are all sorts of issues around who will be impacted by it and who won't be. For those who have been on, well, how long have you been on Facebook, Jack?
I can't remember. I was still living in Sydney, so it's a long time ago, 15, 16 years.
They'll be able to determine your age from the length of your accounts for most of them. There might be a few adults who get pinged, but they can very quickly get into their accounts. But overall, the government is now talking about this cultural change, which is sort of an extension from, I presume, from the sort of 8 to 15-year-olds now, if we want to use that category, that once those people filter through, they're the ones who are going to be a bit grumpy because they can't hit TikTok and they can't hit Facebook and these sorts of Instagram. Once those people filter through, they're saying it'll all be, it'll all evolve nicely in that, kids who are now just born, once they get to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they won't know what they're missing. That's essentially what the government's position is saying. That's when the cultural change will occur.
I can say this, that I was talking to a chap who spends a bit of time across the border in the mainland, and he tells me that the use of VPNs continues to rise over there, and China has some quite strict controls over internet usage.
It does.
And it struck me that if they've been unwilling or unable to remove the use of VPNs, I don't think Australia will be able to.
I'm not sure whether it's an offence to have one in China, Jack, but it certainly isn't in Australia. And, well, just on last year's figures, around 27% of Australians with an internet connection have a VPN. And that number is likely to have spiked a bit more. So we're probably looking more at the 1/3 rather than the 1/4 just in the last few months with these things in. First thing I'd say about VPNs is you should have one, not to avoid under 16 social media restrictions, just because not just governments but corporates, etc., can monitor essentially where you've been visiting. And two, can locate you. It used to be as you're in Sydney, you're hooked up to the Sydney Exchange or something like that. These things can be really pinpointed now, so you should have that VPN. It can cost you about $3 a month. So it's not a lot of dough. And when you install a VPN, if it's a good one, and I'd recommend to our listeners, if you haven't got one and you're looking at it, have a read of some of the tech sites to find out what, sort the wheat from the chaff. But one thing you'll find when you install it, Jack, is it'll tell you, do not list. It'll give you you can list whatever country you want to be sort of seen as using the internet from, but they say do not use Australia because of the under 16 social media restrictions. And I guess a fairly strong view that perhaps Australia is not unlike China in terms of internet control.
Yeah, well, the same chap I was talking to is I think he's doing something in Malaysia because and to do with this, the Malaysian government is considering following Australia's lead.
Oh, there's so many countries that are.
Yeah, and will probably be in lockstep because no one wants to fight the tech companies on their own. Whereas if someone else is fighting them for them, that's a good thing. There's I've got to say the E-Commissioner,
Julie Grant.
Yeah, she always looks to me like a bit of a zealot, which is very unattractive. But there's a long history of people in those circumstances where this is very popular with parents because parents want something done. They don't really know what, nor does she. But this is doing something, so it's good. And what they hope it will do will be to nudge social practice in the direction that they're looking at. That's what you were talking about with the next generation, etc. I don't think this is not going to stop kids from having a TikTok account. But what it might do, they might just be right about that. It nudges social behaviour in a certain direction.
Less screen time.
Yes.
I mean, so we talk about other countries. The Danes, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. The Danes are now looking at it. The Spanish are now looking at it. The French have been looking at this for a number of years.
Yes.
It's now part of the EU's push. The French, as I say, have been doing this for a while. That is part of an overall push to reduce children's screen time, but it comes with fairly significant fines. Like Australia, hasn't been implemented yet, but it's 1% of the platform's turnover. In Australia, it's a 49.5. Let's round it up to $50 million fine. That's the maximum. We do know that Meta, the owners of Facebook and Instagram in particular, are currently sort of scanning and kicking young people out of their Facebook accounts. So these things are going to work for a while. I think talking to my daughters who are well above the 16-year limit now, but there is a lot of talk online about how to avoid the age compliance tests. Inman Grant, who you mentioned before, Jack, has said that they must have them, but doesn't say which. Roblox has now come on board, by the way, and said we don't want anyone under 15 using Roblox. And they use a visual. You have to do a selfie. You have to do a video selfie, and that's how they recognise your age. And it's obviously AI stuff, Jack. I mean, if you or I did that, we'd be, a 96-year-old man wants to play with children and probably punt us. But there's various different means to which they determine age, and I think the length you've held an account would certainly play a big part of that.
I can tell you, we all went across to Macau for my birthday. My son came up from Sydney, and we were shifting spots in a casino to go for a drink after dinner. And we had to go through a security barrier. And my son, being a good young man, pulled out his Hong Kong ID card to show the man. I pulled mine out as well, thinking, it must be some kind of security thing we've got going for. This caused a great deal of hilarity with my son and the security guard, who said, "Dad, this is an age check. I don't think you need to worry. They're just checking that I'm over 21."
I think I got pulled up when I was about 30 in Colorado, where it's drinking age 21, and I congratulated the gentleman on asking me my age. Yeah, look, just a final point on the under-16 social media restrictions. Now, what the government is saying is that if you deliberately try and avoid or get around these whatever age recognition process the platforms use, it still is on the platform, the owners of the platform, whether it's Meta or TikTok or whoever it is, the burden is still on them, and that they can still be subject to these fines. And you just think that's going to end up in court without a doubt.
I suspect that they won't be issuing too many fines. Look, this is one of those things in a headline. It's politically a good idea, but it won't work in the immediate term. Perhaps their nudge theory might work. I must get a VPN, though. I could use it. I have an awful lot of trouble watching. If someone says, "Oh, there was a really good show on the ABC," you can watch it on iView,
and it'll be geo-blocked.
Everything on iView seems to be geo-blocked, and I really can't see any logic to that at all.
But then, Jack, you would have to get a VPN, indicate that your country, the country that you're screening would be Australia.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you were just 15, you wouldn't be able to get on Facebook.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sort of very sceptical about these sort of social engineering by legal instrument or legislative instrument. Always a bit sceptical about that. It must be said, the internet is a very dangerous place. It has some really awful places, and where child sexual exploitation occurs far too frequently. We talked about on this program, we talked about 764, which was a child sexual exploitation network. The 764 came from the last three digits of a postcode of a town or a city in Texas. And children were, including at least one Australian that I know of, children were subject to the most horrific barrage of extortion and appalling behaviour. So there is a problem there. Whether we can deal with it by just prohibition is another thing altogether. All right. Bruce Lehrman, Jack. Now, this shouldn't even be a headline. This should not even be a headline. Bruce Lehrman has lost his appeal. He's $5 million to the bad now, I'd say, and change in terms of debt. But I did notice his lawyer said that she was going to seek advice on whether to pursue a High Court claim, Jack.
Yep, he will.
Good on her.
He will be up in front of the High Court. He has to seek leave, of course, in the High Court.
Of course, you have to seek leave. You can't just turn up and appeal. Yeah.
No. And I wouldn't be. He'd be no fancy odds to get leave.
No, it would be not good odds. And it just seems at this stage, Jack, to be throwing good money after bad. We know that Mr. Lehrman, and I haven't checked this for some time, but he continues to, he will face criminal charges in Toowoomba in relation to a statutory rape charge. So he's got that to continue on with. I believe those charges are still live. Jack, you don't know anything more about it?
No. I believe there was some procedural stuff going on, applications backwards and forwards, but
Thank you.
no, I don't think it's been killed off.
I would
What do you
call
think
it
the
a
odds-
difficult prosecution, given
Yes,
what we're
yes.
talking about is a statutory rape.
Yeah,
And from
and-
what I
and-
know about it, I won't go into any great detail.
Yeah,
is
no,
that there is an allegation that he removed a condom. Or having the following morning, the night before they'd had consensual sex. So I imagine that would be a difficult prosecution, but he still has those woes.
What do you think? What do you think the chances are of any of those lawyers getting their $5 million bucks? You know?
But what I want to know first, Jack, is he puts up their hand and says, "Yeah, I'll help you out with the appeal there, Bruce." How does that happen?
Yeah,
Because she's
kind of findable. That's doable. People will. There's a certain benefit in having been involved in some of these things. You get a bit of publicity, all that kind of stuff.
Publicity,
People get. So I suspect he may well find someone who'll go with him to seek leave to appeal. But if
there was talk of crowdfunding, Jack.
I don't think that'd go well either.
Can't imagine that going well.
No.
Can't imagine that going well at all.
I mean,
if you were in his shoes, Jack, and I'm not suggesting that your behaviour was anywhere near, but just from a legal point of view, what would be your best advice? Walk away, run away?
Well, it's a bit late for that. That's what he should have done after the
criminal trial.
After the criminal trial was discontinued,
Went back to the lion's den for his hat, Jack.
Well, what he should have done was, I don't know, go and live somewhere else. Go and start a new life somewhere.
Yes, I imagine bankruptcy proceedings would be coming at some point in 2026, Jack.
Yep. Well, you would think
Channel 10 are owed a chunk of money. Is Wilkinson owed money from Learman?
I don't know.
But there's significant costs around there, aren't
there?
Yes. So,
yeah.
So, and he has said he's got no assets and very little cash.
I've got to say,
half a bag of cocaine.
I'm struggling to find a lot of sympathy for Lisa Wilkinson or Channel 10 in this either. But there you go.
Yeah, look, and I think this is the case, and I'd probably exempt Brittany Higgins from this, but everyone else in this has been pretty bloody ordinary. And probably Fiona Martin would be the only other one.
Fiona Brown,
I should say. That's right. Sorry about that. Fiona Brown would be the other one I would exempt from criticism, but the others, not too sure.
Well, the Fiona, we talked about it last week. The Fiona Brown thing just gets worse every week.
Yeah, the government has hired some heavy hitters, Jack, some senior counsel, some KCs,
just for a procedural motion. Just for a consent procedural motion.
It just seems overkill. That's what I thought when I read it. Yeah.
I mean, I've been we used to act for the then Prime Minister in some defamation actions, the firm I was with. And I was kind of a baby lawyer, might have been admitted for 18 months, 2 years or whatever, and got sent down to do one of these consent things, right? You don't hire a $5,000 a day lawyer to do that.
It seems there's certainly the signs are we are not going to back down. We are up for the fight here.
Yeah, where any sensible approach would be to say this is a problem and we'll keep going. Let's get everybody in a room and we walk out with a deal.
That's what should be happening. All right, the National Anti-Corruption Commission, the NAC, and its commissioner. What's his first name, Jack? Brereton?
Is it Paul Brereton?
Paul, yeah. I think that's right. He's under the cloud a little bit more, Jack.
Yeah, there was. I watched a bit of this. One of the great benefits of technology, you get these little clips from parts of the Senate committees, etc.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you who goes well. It's the is it Shoebridge, the Green senator?
Yeah.
He's very good at this, and he had one of the officials from NAC in front of him, and that official had said to him earlier on in a previous hearing that Brereton had not done his work for the IDF. You know, this is the theory. It's just the problem is that he's maintained a business relationship with the Australian Defence Force, right?
Yes.
Despite being the commissioner for NAC.
Which would technically
be a problem,
see him. Yeah, well, it's a conflict of interest. He may well have to investigate the Department of Defence, etc.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Now, and the official had said that he didn't do any of this work during the office hours of the NAC, right? And then he had to come back, and he was clarifying it to Mr. Shoebridge, Senator Shoebridge, saying, well, in fact, he did do some work during the office hours of NAC, and he hadn't told me that before because he had to go back and check his records. It was a long thing, but that was the essence of it.
And this is after he's been appointed commissioner?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and he had to go back and check his records. Now, that would be okay if he'd done this on 2 or 3 occasions, but it was more than 10. It might have been nearly 20.
That's significant, yeah.
And he hadn't. That hadn't been foremost in his mind that he had done this during office hours, and that I found extraordinary. I mean, I don't think this is tenable any longer. He may be a terrific appointment, just not for this job.
Yeah, and look, the NACC. I mean, it's ostensibly opaque.
Yes.
Excuse me, and. He's on 800 large a week, Jack. It's the kind of job you and I would do. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to report to anyone besides a couple of reports off to ministers, and we can enjoy a little bit of conflict of interest along the way.
I think it's 900 a year, but just the same. It'd be plenty, you know. And,
it says 800 here, but you may well be right. 800
plus expenses, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Jack, important information about the Australian economy, and we've been talking a little bit about the US economy. And the Australian economy seems to be in similar doldrums, Jack, unable to shrug off inflation back on the rise, and GDP growth really flat. There are a couple of little signs, a couple of little positives. One is that there's been an increase in productivity. How sustainable or long running that is, we will not know for a number of months. And a fair bit of investment. Right now, the biggest areas of growth to the economy, the biggest areas of spending in the Australian economy are coming from the Commonwealth, or at least from government.
So the figure I read was productivity was up by 0.2%, which is low.
It's actually, I think it's, I think that's 0.2%. I can see that figure, but it's actually for that quarter, not too bad. But it, you know, I saw the Treasurer talking about these figures last night, and he was saying, and it's quite right, that productivity can jump all over the place from month to month.
It can.
But
of course, this is
the only bit of good news, though, and it's not great news.
It's important in this sense, is that we know from history that the way out of this malaise from around the world is productivity increases, is growth, and that generally comes from productivity increases. There's no other way, really, for not just for Australia, but for the other large economies, to get out of this problem, but to grow their way out of this problem.
And globally, as well as in Australia, economic growth is in torpor.
Yes.
The US not going backwards, but not going forward in a hurry, and the same, of course, it features throughout most European economies.
Everyone except the Poles.
Yeah, the polls going okay, but again, you know, you are talking about sort of substantial growth all of a sudden can be a problem in itself, Jack. Anyway, the ANZ, Jack, they've got some major corporate issues, haven't they? And this comes in the wake of a Royal Commission which exposed ANZ as well as the other big four, and a number of other superannuation companies like AMP and so forth, exposed for some appalling practices, including sending out or charging the dead interest and these sorts of things. And well, it got to the point with ANZ where Justice Jonathan Beach, it's a very famous name in the legal world, Jack. Justice Jonathan Beach. I don't know if he's related to
Barry
the
Beach,
Victorian QC.
Barry Beach, and the former QC and judge was his father, I believe.
Okay, there you go. Justice Jonathan Beach has expressed utter disbelief that ANZ failed to act on warnings about dealing with deceased estates, which were addressed by the Banking Royal Commission over 5 years ago. Can I tell a little personal story? And I just want to be a bit careful because it does relate to ANZ, and this relates to the death of my mother and her husband, who died some 12 hours later. Now, they had a joint account. We understood that, it was the sort of last man standing. That was all okay. I did have a reasonable sort of encounter with the ANZ about this. It was not easy, I must say. It took probably 30 or 40 phone calls and lots of, not yelling, but lots of very firm positions. And they eventually came around. This was just there was a significant amount of money in that joint account, but it was sitting with the survivor, my stepfather. And we needed to pay for the funeral. And the ANZ finally did sort of come around and pay that. We had to pay it. Go to the loan sharks to pay it, but it wasn't a great experience. But at least we had people listening to us, and that was in ANZ's Deceased Estates Department.
Yeah, but Beach was making some reasonable points that after all of the bad publicity and after being pulled through a royal commission, they're still not getting the basic things right.
Well, there were other things, weren't there, Jack? Basically now ANZ Bank is no longer receiving Commonwealth money, not in any significant way in terms of bonds, because they were rorting it. So that was the last disgrace. That was about 3 months ago. And now we've still got these issues about costs, interest, expenses, all sorts of things being levied against people who are dead.
Yes, yeah. You just think that somebody in a bank like that, they employ a lot of people. You think somebody would be having a look at this. Would have been before it got back to court again.
What does that say about the culture there, Jack? Not much, eh? Not much.
Well,
all you need really is a little boost in compliance staff, and you start seeing some results. They obviously just haven't done that. It's easy to kick the banks, but this is stuff that really should have been fixed 5 years ago. It shouldn't have been happening in the first place, of course, but it should have been fixed 5 years ago across all the major banks. And yet the ANZ continues to do these things. It's not a good look when the dead are being hit with bank charges and fees, often to a point where their estates just dwindle. Interesting one here, Jack. We're moving overseas now. United Kingdom, and in the United Kingdom, they're taking jury trials away for crimes that carry a likely sentence of less than 2 years. So that requires a bit of judgment on behalf of the beak anyway, wouldn't it? I mean, if let's say you've got an assault, grievous bodily harm, someone's been quite badly injured, does the judge say, well, this is going to be more than, if he's found guilty, this is going to have a custodial sentence more than 3 years? Or is it just mandated to offences that carry penalties that are less than 2-3 years in prison?
The English in particular are much more fond of jury trials than Australians are. That's partly for long historical reasons. I mean, this all stems from the Magna Carta, which was signed at Runnymede, et cetera, that you can still go and visit the site, all that kind of thing. But they've had a system that allowed virtually anybody charged with an offence which could lead to incarceration to opt for a jury trial. Some of them opt out and just have it dealt with in the local magistrates court or whatever.
Yep.
But you've always had that option, and they've got a huge backlog. And once again, the UK government, the Justice Minister, David Lammy, the former Foreign Minister, is pushing this. And of course, he was, it's only 4 or 5 years ago, that he was lambasting the Conservative government for considering this as well. So this is all over the net. They just look, a shambles again.
Looking a bit silly, but obviously there's a benefit in terms of cost.
Yes.
Not having the 12 good men and women true to listen to a case. What can go wrong, Jack, if you have judge-only trials for relatively minor offences?
Well, it depends what sort of one of the things they're talking about getting rid of jury trials for is for financial crimes and fraud. And there is some benefit in not having a jury in those cases because they can become long and complex and hard to explain.
Long and complicated, and juries don't often understand the complexity of sort of obtaining financial advantage by deception in a very sort of complicated way.
Yeah. Judges equally don't always understand those things either, but there's probably a better chance than the thing. But it becomes important in, say, go back to the riots after the Southport stabbings, right? There were people given very stiff sentences by the judges for comment, right? For stupid comments they made, and
they weren't stupid. I mean, I guess the one you're talking about. I got to jump in here. There was a woman there, and she was moaning, and so were her family. She was encouraging people to attack a hotel, to set fire to a hotel where asylum seekers were, and she got locked up. And I really don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but that's the sort of case that I think you should have a jury for, because that's a kind of a common sense thing, and that would be better handled by a jury. I would prefer, if I'd done something as stupid as that, I would prefer that my fellow citizens decided the case.
Well, I'm not sure now. I don't recall whether she pleaded guilty or not guilty. I don't remember whether she did or not. But I guess the jury could only find whether she was guilty or not.
Yes.
And the judge would still be involved in the sentencing.
Yes. At any event, this is going to be another kerfuffle in the UK.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of noise for not very much at all, Jack.
No, there's no sound basis for thinking that this will vastly reduce their backlog, and the backlog is a problem. It becomes important in cases that are very destructive to those involved. So. A high proportion of rape cases are not going ahead because the victims, the person who's made the complaint, don't want to hang around having this hang over their head for 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years, right?
You mentioned fraud. There's a case down my part of the world where a fellow who was essentially running a fairly massive Ponzi scheme, about $50 million disappeared, basically gone into the ether. The liquidator has told the creditors just write it off as bad debt because this guy's got nothing. Now, he was rolled in 2013. That was when basically the company went into liquidation, enforced liquidation, because of an outstanding loan that they had that wasn't paid. And 2 years later, almost to the day, this fellow, his lawyer said, look, he pleaded guilty, so it could have gone another 2 years. He pleaded guilty, and his lawyer hopefully asked that bail be continued, but no dice for this particular fellow. Used to see him down the local watering holes, Jack, often heavily refreshed. and betting like a lunatic. And I always thought there's something a bit iffy about this bloke, and now we found out that there is. Ethics in politics, Jack, does it work? Is it really just not fertile ground for ethics, Jack, in politics?
Well, this is the continuing fallout from the UK budget, right? And the question of whether the Chancellor misled voters. The allegation is, and it's probably right, I think, that she was running around saying that there is a $22 billion black hole in the budget and we need to raise more revenue to meet that, to fill that black hole. Whereas in fact,
they've taken government,
yeah,
they've gone back, they've found out, or they're claiming that the Tories had cooked the book somewhat, and
this is her second budget, so that excuse is kind of running out, has run out. But what in fact they were doing was they wanted to raise the welfare payments, and they needed extra money for that.
Yes.
Right? There's all these suggestions that they have an ethics advisor, and what's his name, Sir Laurie Magnus, and there's a great push.
I was going to say be knighted.
Yeah, great push to have the ethics advisor rule on this. And I read that and I thought, I don't like the idea of having anointed officials. I didn't like it when it happened to Boris Johnson. I don't like it when it's happening now. I don't like the idea of anointed officials being some sort of moral arbiter of what parliamentarians have done, because it's the House of Commons who should decide that, and ultimately the people who vote for the House of Commons who should decide that. This is not something that you can subcontract out and still maintain your proper place.
Well, is there a role at all for ethics advisors, Jack, in politics? Should the Prime Minister's office have an ethics specialist to advise on legislation? I wouldn't be listened to very often. I wouldn't have thought.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, there's a big kerfuffle in the last couple of days' paper about Tony Burke dealing with some constituents with regard to the return of what are called the ISIS brides from Syria and Lebanon, and that he at one stage turned a departmental meeting with these people into a political meeting by asking the officials to leave so he could speak to them local member to constituent. No? And I don't have a problem with him doing that. Quite often there needs to be a bit of hard-headed politics to fix things.
That in particular is a very, very complex problem.
Yes.
I had a bit of a chat just, to so people on the street, if you like. It was my next door neighbour, and he couldn't understand why the ISIS brides and their children should be allowed back into the country. And I think that's a fairly common view among many Australians. With the simple fact, and I probably didn't explain myself terribly well, but I said, Australian citizenship's got to count for something.
It does.
And you just can't. I mean, I know governments would love to take it away, and often do take it away if they get half a chance. But it's got to mean something, and it's a lot different here to someone just getting boozed up and getting locked up in some totalitarian state for a long period of time. But in many ways, it's the same thing. Australian consulate staff should be looking after Australian citizens. Certainly the children are completely innocent, and it will cost a lot of money to have them come back here. And obviously they will be monitored and they'll be watched and assisted. But really, it's just part of it. Most of these ISIS brides too were taken to Syria. They certainly weren't abducted, but what I'm saying is they were taken by very persuasive male partners, Jack.
The other thing that came up with all of this with me was the idea that you should be punishing politicians for misleading the public or voters. And I remembered a story I was told years ago. Huey Long, who was a Democrat governor of Louisiana.
Well, that must have been a while back, Jack.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't got to go back that far to find Democrat governors in Louisiana. You only got to go back to Lyndon Johnson's time.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was campaigning in southern Louisiana, and he was told that many of the local voters were Catholic. And his response was, when I was giving speeches, I would tell them I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday when I was a boy, and I would take my Catholic grandparents to Mass. I get home, and at 10 o'clock, I'd hitch up the old horse again, and I would take my Baptist parents to church. A colleague said to him, I didn't know you had any Catholic grandparents, and to which he replied, don't be a damn fool, we didn't even have a horse.
I don't get it. You'll have to explain that.
Well, see, politicians have been misleading voters forever, you know, and always will. And it's up to us as voters to say, this is a load of hooey or it's not. No?
The late Graham Richardson, Jack, wrote a book all about it, essentially why it's okay to lie. And you'll find that most politicians do. The really interesting feature of that for me is the tell. Can you tell if someone's lying when they're telling you something that is obviously untrue? I thought you could always tell with Malcolm Turnbull. I thought Julia Gillard would look down a little bit. There was a little bit of a tell. Scott Morrison, nothing. No, just nothing. Straight into the camera and off he went in that sort of compelling way, you know.
Well, we expect them all to tell us fibs. I mean, the idea of cabinet solidarity, you know how that works. But if you're in the cabinet, and it might be an 11-10 decision or something, or a 6-5 decision. So you're on the losing side. You're expected to leave that cabinet room and go out there and defend the winning side, whether you like it or not.
Well, yeah, whether you're for it or against it.
Yeah, and that's in effect telling a fib, right? But we require that, and the system needs that, really. Yeah,
it does. Moving to problems in Ukraine, US and Ukrainian officials hammered out a peace deal, Jack, and it went. It was taken to Moscow, where Vladimir Putin said "niet." And I did see. I haven't seen Lavrov for a while. There's some talk that he might have been purged. Sergei Lavrov, the foreign affairs minister, but just didn't see him. They had a foreign affairs spokesman, a really gaunt looking. He really did look like he just walked out of the 1970s Politburo, Jack. He had the grey suit on and he just looked grey. And he said that they weren't happy with the wording in certain ways. Putin then went on television to tell Russians that they were winning the war, and went further to say that if Europe wanted war, they would destroy. I think there was some sort of reference to basically the utter destruction of Europe if they decided to turn on the Russians, Jack. So plenty of chest beating from Vladimir.
Yes. I think he's right about the Europeans in this sense. What did he say in an interview? The Europeans have had this fantasy about imposing a strategic defeat on Russia, and all these talking points, and keep repeating them in these allusions. I think he's right. I mean, I just don't think that there's any prospect that you can force Russia. Well, you could force Russia back out of the east of Ukraine proper and out of the Crimea, but at a huge cost in terms of lives and money, and no one's going to do that, I don't think. So, it's
well. I mean, this was the piece that was supposed to happen around about November last year, Jack.
Within a day, yeah.
Yeah, within a day.
Yeah.
It's proving to be a little bit tougher than that, and it would seem that Putin was also showing, reviewing maps and strategic positions and these sorts of things. He's also claiming that they've got territory they don't have. And there is a sense that with all of his rhetoric yesterday, I thought he is very much sort of preaching to his own people about this, a morale boost, if you like.
He's going to have to sell a deal, probably. He's going to have to sell the idea that he forced a better deal.
Yeah, that's probably where we are. But he's in no hurry, Jack. I think that's the position.
Of course he's not in a hurry.
There was some very strange stuff coming from the American delegation, Jack, where they talked about, business arrangements with Russia. And that sort of, it's a very Trumpian way of doing things, that you come up with a solution based on a solid business outcome for the Russians. And that just seems to be a very odd approach too. But at this stage, the war sadly continues. Meanwhile, Jack, we'll start with Trump's polling because he is now, there's a few crossing the Rubicon type events with Trump. He is now in the negative in all polls. And in some polls, Jack, he's around about -20, just sort of nudging that now. With most of the polling, this must be of concern, most of the polling indicating concerns around economic management, Jack, that his approval on economic management is starting to slip. And then I saw an interview with him yesterday, or a statement from him, where he talked about slinging out, is it the $2,000 checks to every man, woman and child? It's not going to happen. I guarantee you it will not happen. And also slipped in another one, and you won't be paying income tax. So I thought, whoa, you will be paying income tax. That's something you can put in. What I mean is, Jack, his statements on the economy, and we go back a few more weeks, and he's going, oh, no, look, everything's cheaper now. And people know it's not cheaper because they're the ones reaching for their purses, wallets, when they have to buy their groceries and pay for their juice and pay for their energy bills and so forth.
Well, we have
that
recent
kind of
example.
delusion is just the wrong way to handle this. And I did read where sort of, an unnamed White House advisor said he's saying the wrong things all the time. He keeps saying all the wrong things. And that probably leads us into that point about his health and capacity. Yeah, did have a bit of a nod off when Marco Rubio was making a speech, Jack, but I think we can forgive him.
Yes.
It was a pretty dull speech, I got to tell you. Just walk through the polling. I mean, his polling is as bad as Biden's ever was. Actually, some of it's worse.
Yep. And if you want to look for an example of what happens when you tell people things are better than that they think they are,
than they're experiencing, yeah.
Just look at what happened to Biden when he was doing the same thing, when that administration was doing that. It doesn't work.
It's really tough to deal with the cost of living issue as a politician.
But the worst thing you can do is tell people it's okay.
It's not happening. Oh, no, everything's cheaper now. Everything's cheaper now. And, I think that's why he is in this polling spiral. They did have, I noticed SBS, I don't know who writes their headlines, but whoever it was, really stupid. We're talking about the result. There was a special election in Tennessee yesterday, Jack, and the Republicans won, and it was sort of like, so what? I mean, I don't think the Dems will be going, oh, gee whiz. We were a little bit off. We were a little bit off here, and we've been beaten in Tennessee. It was a very safe Trump seat that actually shifted a bit to the Democrats. They wouldn't be too unhappy about it at all.
This was a seat that in the last presidential election, Trump won by 22 points, and they're going to win it by 8 or 9 or something. So, but it's also bounced around. The Republicans won it by a couple of percent just an election or so ago. So, not too much to read into it. And the Democrat candidate was a little bit odd. She's standing in this district that encompasses Nashville, and she came out a couple of weeks before the vote and says, I hate Nashville.
Ooh, it's just like telling Tennesseans, I don't like country music.
Yes. Yes.
Don't do that.
So she was an odd choice to be the candidate, I've got to say.
Just can't stand the sound of banjos.
Yeah.
All right. Harry Enton from CNN has said this has been the worst 10-day polling period for Trump in his second term. His overall net approval hit record lows in 5 polls. His net approval with independents is down 39 points from January to minus 43. That's a significant figure. If those people vote, or enough of them, look out. His net approval on inflation is down by now to a negative 34. So these are major, major smashes. And again, we just saw more of this. Everything's as beautiful as ever it's going to be, and then throw in a bit of a lie. Look, we'll be sending you a check for $2,000. I don't know politically how does that work. I mean, if you're not going to do it, someone's going to say, hey, where's my $2,000 before they wander into the ballot box in November next year.
Well, he won't be on the ballot, but this is going to go a fair way, I would think.
Bannon thinks he will, but that's not for another 2 years after that.
Yeah. Oh, well, if anyone gives you reasonable odds on that not happening, jump on and let me know.
He's got some. Yeah. Well, we don't have much here, but Bannon has got some fairly spectacular problems with the Epstein files too, Jack.
I don't think you need to narrow Bannon's problems down too much. He's got a few, but this doesn't really resolve around. I mean, Trump's not going to be a candidate again, so it revolves around what effect he would have on the midterm elections next year, and whether he'll have to do what most presidents do, which is to govern without a majority in Congress for the last bit of his presidential life.
Alrighty, well, here's a thing, Jack. This is a bit controversial. Derek Thompson, I'm not sure who he is, but he highlights a surge in disability registrations at elite US colleges, citing over 20% of undergraduates at Brown and Harvard, 34% at Amherst, and 38% at Stanford, from a January 2026 Atlantic article, yet to be published, arguing that a large number of students are applying for accommodations, shall we say, for their accessible work, be it appearing at examinations or in accessible work outside of that forum, and we're seeing a series of spikes. I've lost the image that you sent through. That just didn't come through to me, but or it did, but I haven't saved it. But there are some fairly significant numbers there, Jack.
Yeah, this is a problem. What happens if you get a disability assessment? That you get extra time to answer questions or do exams. Or indeed, if it's take-home work or whatever, you get special accommodation. You even get better accommodation, right? Because you're a disabled person. And it seems to be that it's the well-off who are doing this because they can afford the expensive tests and the expensive psychologists who are going to provide the evidence for this. And it's the scholarship kid who's not going to get this. And I looked at one of the colleges, and they listed the types of disability, and I kind of think of disability for students as being kind of visual or hearing, but the numbers for that were really quite low, And this particular fall intake, it was, 62 for vision, 70 for hearing, 185 for autism, 259 for neurological or nervous system, 285 for mobility, ADHD, 1,603, psychological or emotional disability, 2,416. And I just got to say, that doesn't seem right to me.
I understand what you're saying, but what are we comparing it against? I mean, what are we comparing? Because if we compared it against, let's say, the 70s when you and I were at university, Jack, these things just weren't diagnosed,
Yeah.
you could not go to a tutor or a lecturer and say, "Listen, I can't get my work in today because I'm suffering from clinical depression. I'm bipolar. I've got ADHD." I mean, these things really So we go back in the 70s, Jack. None of that stuff kind of existed. We were I think we're still on the DSM-3 at this stage. So there's a lot more diagnosis. You've got to. I understand what you're saying, but you've got to understand that there is a lot more diagnoses now, particularly for those people who are perhaps high wealth. They've had the opportunities to have themselves assessed, and often in an expensive way with visits to psychiatrists, and they will have under their arm a diagnosis.
There's a Stanford professor who was interviewed. He said, he was co-chair of the Disability Task Force at Stanford. I have had conversations with people in the Stanford administration. They've talked about at what point can we say no? What if it hits 50 or 60%? At what point do you just say, we can't do this?
I mean, I understand that. But again, what we're finding out more now, some of it driven by the pandemic, some of it pre-existing, is that there are now a larger number of chronic conditions for which there are no cure. I was having this conversation with a mate of mine in London. There are a large number of people on disability pensions in the UK. That are
an extraordinarily large number of people.
Most of them attributed to psychological injury, I suppose or psychological condition. And all I can say is that you really have to work from the starting point that these things were not diagnosed. Even 20 years ago, these things were not diagnosed with the same sort of in the same sort of numbers that they were. So you're going to start from that point of view as well. And then, I've been doing a little bit of work for ME, also known as chronic fatigue syndrome. And if you had ME back in the 90s, Jack, you were told you're a bludger, and you had a psychological injury, but not a physical one, or a biochemical one, and that was the way people were dealt with along the way while these people were suffering terribly. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's two ways of looking at it, and I think those two ways are not mutually exclusive.
What do you do if you're, say, a future employer and you're looking at someone's Stanford results and say, gee, they're pretty smart, and you don't know that those results have been obtained on the basis of very special accommodations in terms of time to do exams and all that kind of stuff? How do you judge that? Because you're going to have to employ the person. Are you going to have to provide them with special time to do any work for you, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. The short answer is yes, and the short answer is that the employer should be embracing those sorts of people and accommodating them in their work. I mean, again, I'm talking about people that suffer from ME, CFS, for example. And I know of one person who battled through, got a degree, and then found employment with a company, and she was upfront. She was upfront about it and said, look, this is the condition I have. The employer was great. I'm not saying everyone will be, but the employer said, you can work part-time. You can work a 3-day week, and you can work out your hours and all that sort of stuff. The issue is that person has to be upfront about their particular issues, and sometimes they may not be. And the employer, prospective employer, needs to embrace that, there is around a lot of diversity around mental health and around physical health. But I still take your point that there is a sort of end point to a lot of this stuff, and some of it will be abuse, but for the most part, you'd like to think people are genuine.
Oh, no, I never think that. That's never my
No,
style.
well, that's because you're a black-hearted cynic, Jack.
No, just because I've seen these things happen. I'm a lawyer. You see this stuff happening all the time.
Yeah. Not every piece of wisdom is directed by the law, Jack.
No, it's not. Well, I absolutely agree with that. The idea that you appoint, a priestly caste of lawyers to determine what's morally right and wrong is ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, that bloke who got locked up in my part of the world had the law degree too, mate. But no, so ethics seem to have slipped him by as well. All right, well, we're going to move on nice and early into sport. We moved too late last week, so this time, we're probably going the wrong way. But we won't. The Gabba is almost upon us, but we'll move on from that. South Africa had a lovely little win in an ODI against India, a packed and talented Indian side that featured another 100 from Kohli, 53rd 100 in an ODI from Kohli. And the person who comes close to him is Sachin Tendulkar with 49. But it wasn't enough to get them the win, and South Africa have had a pretty good tour. It's 1-1 in this ODI series, but they beat India in the Test series 2-0. And Gaikwad also got 100, and Aidan Markham came out and smacked it around for 110. And their cricket's really moving along. This has been a very, very successful tour of South Africa of India by South Africa. So that's the first thing. New Zealand are playing the West Indies and putting on a big total for the West Indies to chase down. New Zealand were knocked over in the first innings for 231. This is the first test in Christchurch. New Zealand all out for 231. West Indies 167 in response, and now New Zealand rolling along at 2 for 112 with Rashan Ravindra on 60 and Tom Latham on 90. And we'll stick with the off-Gabba theme. Jack, I did watch a bit of the Sydney Thunder v Brisbane Heat game, and the only thing I'll say about that, which I've said before, is Phoebe Litchfield is the best women's cricketer, best bat. She's the captain of the Sydney Thunder. She is a wonderful cricketer, and she plays really good cricket shots too. So she's not a slogger. She's a real good bat, and she just makes runs for fun. Terrific player, terrific cricketer from hails from the Orange area. Now, Jack, on to the Gabba. Usman Khawaja out. Let's see if they've announced their playing 11 yet, Jack. It's largely unchanged. The 12 is unchanged, but what we're looking for is to see whether Bo Webster will play. And that would mean that probably that head opens, and for England, Wood has not come up. Their fastest bowler has not bounced back, and that was no surprise. And they've gone in with an 11 that includes a left arm finger spinner, Jack. He can bat a bit. He is a jack as well. And how do you think? I think Australia will be looking to get into him when he gets the ball thrown to him.
Yes.
Will Jacks, I should say, batting all round, throws it around, but can bat. I saw him play some county cricket when I was in England. It was a pretty handy bat. So it boosts their batting, but Mark Wood is out. And we're not sure if they're using the Duke or the Kookaburra. What do you do if you win the toss?
Well, you bat.
You bet, don't you? You bet for about 4 hours if you can last that long. And then maybe a declaration. I don't think there'll be too many declarations around dusk. I think we sort of got used to that idea of, in Adelaide, pig ball tests that they would say, they'll probably declare at 8 down around about 6 o'clock at night with about 3 hours to play. I don't think we'll see too much of that.
I'm
Who
just going to
wins
say that.
and why?
Well, it's a test match. Either of them can win. I mean, you'd see, Australia would start favourites because they generally win at home and they generally win at the Gabba.
Yeah, well, they've got a long history of dominance at the Gabba,
Yeah.
Not just over England, on anybody, over anybody. I think they lost to India there. No, they lost to the West Indies there, if you remember, Jack.
Yes, they did.
That was a day-nighter from memory. But doesn't happen too often. And, of course, Mitchell Starc averages 17 with the pink ball.
Yeah. But even after the first test in Perth, I still think this is the best England side that's come to Australia for quite a while.
I think they're batting. They really do need to, they'll need to bat.
That's a strategy. That's a strategy problem, not a skill problem. I still look at it and say, although effectively 1 for 110 or something at lunch on the second day, Ricky Ponting described it as an unlosable test, and the statistician said 75% chance of winning, and they managed to do that, but they lost it.
But and it was reckless batting, Jack.
Yes,
I mean, just looking at Ollie Pope, how wide was the ball that he drove? He drove to, I think, first slip, and the same could be said of
Harry Brook
and Duckett as well. Root, of course, but see, Duckett and Pope were set. They were settled at the crease, and that was the shame of it for mine. And so the next batter in. That was Joe Root. They needed to settle down, build that lead. But instead, we saw big flashy shots. One thing I would say, there's been a lot of rain in southeast Queensland, Jack, and so there's bound to be a bit of juice in that track. So batting first might not be very much fun. Batting second might not be very much fun.
And the other thing,
I think all we can hope for is we can see a bit of cricket on the Saturday, Jack. There'll be a third day's play.
The other thing is that came out of that first test for me was that was the best England attack I have seen in Australia for a very, very long time.
It looked really formidable, very fast. Obviously, Wood will who consistently hits 150s will not be available. Jofra Archer bowled 140 plus, nudging 100, 150 in that first dig. But then when it came to the second dig, Jack,
they were slow.
He was another 10, 15 kilometres slower. So that's an issue. I do really like their support acts. The Josh Tongue, I think, has been good, and Gus Atkins. I think those two guys have been pretty good, but they'll have to shoulder a lot of the burden this time. As I say, they've gone in with Will Jacks, who's just boosts their batting, but flings them down with the fingers and left arm, I think, and right arm off break, I should say, and he. They will look to get into him if he is around bowling. And there we'll see, Jack. Can I tell you, I saw what I hope is not the future of cricket. Just a few days ago, I was watching this ILT20. Have you seen it?
No.
It's a tournament played in the UAE. A lot of it in Abu Dhabi. Tim David plays, I think, he plays for one of the franchises. Smacked around about a 98 the other day. Really is a big power hitter, and probably should be in the ODI side, the Australian ODI side. The games were played in front of zero crowds. This is done for consumption, for private consumption or television consumption around South Asia and to a degree in the Middle East. And it was just utterly soulless, Jack. It was just nothing in it. The blokes didn't even look that keen in the field. Tim David's a good field. He, showed them how to catch a ball a few times, but, they didn't even look quite fit, some of the players. when you see them sort of scramble after a fly ball or something like that. Didn't look fit, didn't make the distance, didn't get to the ball drop. Just look really shit to me, Jack. So we really do need to save this, save the longer forms of the game, particularly the red ball game. Because as mad on cricket as I am, and I'll be watching cricket most times and more times than not, I don't want to see the game end up like that.
Now,
Go on.
public school backgrounds and Test cricket teams.
Oh, I thought you were gonna
Here's a question for you.
Yeah, go on.
All bar one of the England 11 from Perth finished their schooling at a private school.
Finished their schooling?
Finished.
Yeah, I mean, I
Do
think
you know who
that's-
the exception was?
Oh, well, Ben Stokes born in New Zealand.
Yeah, he's the captain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else finished their schooling at a private school. And this kind of, the Australian mix is about 50-50, right? I think. And it is quite different. And there's a bloke, I think you know, but who played for Australia, Ed Cowan, who I think was a Cranbrook boy.
Yeah, Cranbrook, yeah.
Yeah. And he said that if you're joining the Australian team, and you're from a private school, they tend to think you're as soft as butter, and you've got to be even better than normal to get in. Do you think that's still true in Australian cricket?
I don't know. I mean, I think the point I would make is that, and Sam Conscious, of course, has spent, I don't know whether he was on whether he was being paid for by the school, but he spent 2 years at Cranbrook. Now, Cranbrook's a very expensive school, costs you 40 large a year,
Yes.
because your parents will. But what they will have there, like a lot of private schools, and the same goes in England, is a dedicated cricket program with coaches, former first-class players, these sorts of guys to act as batting coaches and what have you. So the private school guys definitely have an advantage because these are things that the state can't do.
The difference is, I think, in Australia is that club cricket is the way through for most players. That it's
in the UK, you will find a lot of private schools will have a cricket academy. That's the other reason. Yeah. And so whether they charge a lot or not very much, I'm not sure. I know quite a lot of Cranbrookians, old Cranbrookians, and they often tell a story. They had a pretty good side, had a pretty good cricket side, and some of their guys ended up representing the New South Wales private schools. I forget what the actual term is, and they played in the States. They played the New South Wales high school side, featuring Steve and Mark Wall, and these guys were good, but they weren't that bloody good. So they got well and truly touched up.
But it is an interesting cultural difference between the two sides when you think about it like that.
Well, yeah, I've been amused by Stuart Broad's presence in the country. He's quite a likeable guy. Obviously, private school educated, father played for England, etc. But he's
played some cricket at Werribee, I think.
Hoppers Crossing.
Hoppers Crossing, yes.
I did do a profile on him many, many years ago. It was after he nicked one the first slip and refused to walk.
And didn't walk, yeah.
And I thought I'll ring up Hoppers Crossing Cricket Club, get hold of the president, get hold of a few players there. And obviously they'll tell some stories about what a terrible human being Stuart Broad is. And no one's uttered a bad word about him. They loved him. He played there as a sort of semi-pro at 17 years of age, and they just thought he was a terrific young bloke. And I think he is.
And he said the year at Hoppers Crossing was sort of the making of him. You know, they toughened him up. They made him competitive. And if you want to watch him,
It's sub-district cricket in Melbourne. It's good hard cricket.
it's good standard. If you want to know more about Stuart Broad, watch the Front Bar episode with Stuart Broad. And he was terrific.
He was very good on that, and
as you say, very likable. Just talking about the cultural differences. I read a story. Chris Cowdrey, Colin's son, was briefly the captain of England. Right?
Yeah, he's a Nepo baby, a cricket Nepo baby,
and he wasn't captain for long. But they're in the West Indies, and he says, because I'm captain, I thought I'd better do the right thing. So I put on the full whites, the blazer and the cap, and go out to toss the coin with the West Indies captain, Vivian Richards. And I've got the team sheet in front of me because I know it's my job to read to him the list of the 11 players who are going to be playing for England. So I said, I walk out there, we shake hands. Viv's in a pair of surf shorts and flip-flops and a T-shirt, right? And I start to read the names of the England team to him. I get about 4 names in, and Viv says, mate, I don't care who you play. It's not going to make any difference.
Yeah, so you could diss into W.G. Grace and it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
And my favourite story was one. There's a really good podcast that involves Mitchell Starc's wife, Alyssa Healy, and Brad Haddon, and they had Broad on there too. And so Haddon loved a sledge. He loved it. You might remember the final in the ODI World Cup at the MCG, where he told all his teammates, he goes, we've been too nice, and started sledging off the Kiwis who didn't quite know what was going on. But he told the story about Ben Stokes' first test in Australia, and they'd heard a bit about him, and, you know, he's obviously had a lot of promise and all that sort of stuff. Well, I think he got Haddon out nicking, and that would have been his first test wicket. And Haddon's wandered off, and then here's the roar of the crowd. It was at home. I think it might have been Adelaide, because Ben Stokes has overstepped and no ball, and Brad Haddon go back. But he didn't just go back to the crease, Jack. He congratulated Ben Stokes on his first test wicket. Yeah. And Michael Clark was batting with him. Michael Clark came down and said, mate, it could be on here. He goes, I know, I love it. He really loved a bit of conflict, did Brad Haddon, rugby league boy, and never took a backward step. Look, yeah, we're all very, very excited about it. In the F1, Jack, Oscar Pistorius, there seems to be some sort of terrible conspiracy that will not allow him to take the championship. Have you had much of a look at it? You're probably not a car guy.
No, we used to follow it when I was a kid, but it does all look just slightly dodgy, doesn't it?
It looks like he should have won. He should have had it in the bag.
Had a lot of 2
Grand Prix ago.
He's had a lot of bad luck, is all I can say.
It's like the mob who are looking after him don't want him to win.
Yeah.
McLaren, I think. He's in the McLaren
all the luck seems to go against him, right? Which is odd, right?
These guys, if you look at their background, someone like Pistorius, I mean, they've been basically driving vehicles since they're about 2. He would have been a go-kart racer and all the way up to supercars and all that sort of stuff. So,
and they're all jockey
sons. We hope there's one more to go. God, hopefully he can get a win. I think whether he needs a win or 2nd or 3rd place, I don't know. But I hope he gets what he wants. But it's not often the way things work in F1. And of course, Jack, just to wrap up our sports yarns, North Melbourne did rather comfortably win the AFLW tournament. There was a question on one of the game shows last night saying how many games did they lose this season, and the answer, of course, is none. So congratulations to the Kangaroos in the AFLW, lifted the cup up last weekend. Good on them, but beat Brisbane by 30 or 40 points in the end.
Very good seat.
They are the mainstay of the competition. They are the watershed. You got to get past them to do any good in that competition.
But it was a very good, the best season that the W's had. The standard is much, much better this year. North better than, as you say, better than the rest, but all the rest were better than they were the year before, I think. So it's going to be a scramble to bring their standard up to North standard, I think.
Yeah, they are the high watermark of women's footy at the moment. All righty, well that takes us out. We got to rush. We got to go and put some beers on ice and prepare for the game in about an hour and 20 minutes. I won't be doing much for the rest of the day. Jack, I don't know about you.
Got some stuff to do,
I'll
be 5 o'clock Hong Kong time. I'll be there ready to watch a bit of the last session. Tom Stoppard,
yes, that was very sad. Yeah,
the English
one of the
playwright,
great playwrights of the 20th century.
Yeah, dead at 88, and there was a lot of stuff on the social media in particular about him. Most of it complimentary, but I rather like this story. Steven Spielberg. They're preparing to shoot Jaws, and he rings up and offers Tom Stoppard the job of writing the screenplay. And Tom says no, he can't do that because he's writing a play for the BBC. So Spielberg writes back to him and says, "Are you kidding? You're knocking back an insane amount of money to write a blockbuster movie that will be watched by hundreds of millions of people around the world just to write a play for BBC TV that almost no one will see." And Tom responded, "Actually, it's for BBC Radio."
If we remember Jaws, Jack, it wasn't all that well written.
No. Tom would have improved it, yes.
I think would have definitely improved it. Vale, the great playwright. All right, that does take us out from episode 137. I have been a little bit remiss, but we will be putting some listener comments in our program for next year. By gee, Jack, we're about 2 weeks away from the last one for the year, I'd reckon.
Yeah.
And look, do get into us about that, and we will go through our listener stuff. Certainly, if not next week, the week after, which we'll probably pull up stumps around that time until early January. Okay. Yes, it's been a delight to put the program together. Thank you, Jack, for your erstwhile opinions, and we look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thanks, listeners. See ya.